This is a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage in the trial of Scot Peterson, the Parkland School resource officer. We're up to segment number 2 of today. Let's go to the courtroom.
Likewise, as present, we're outside the presence of the jury. I have the witness back on the witness stand. State anything you need me to address before we bring the jury back in and resume with the redirect examination.
No, Your Honor.
Defense, anything you need me to address?
Just one thing. We have a witness that is very hard to get, and I brokered a deal with her mom. The student will be on Zoom at 3 o'clock. So if you could let us know, is there a way you can let us know when she zooms in? Will you be notified?
I don't have it on. I would have to turn the meeting on. But when I do that, it renders these other... Do you have another witness that we can start? You just want me to pause at 3 o'clock?
Yes, and we might need to get through those, 1 or 2 of those witnesses, depending on how. I just want to let the court know.
So at 3 o'clock, we're going to go to a Zoom witness. Yeah, I can handle that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, please bring the jury back in.
Jurors entering.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back in those seats, you may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back in those seats, you may be seated. All the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get the notepads back in. Ladies and gentlemen, when we took our restroom break, we were in the middle of the redirect examination of the witness. We're going to pick it up at that point. The witness remains on the witness stand under oath. Mr. Igarsh, when you are ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant, we left off where you were driving Scott back to the school to pick up his vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what his demeanor was like, how he was feeling in that moment, without, again, telling us what he said? What did he look like? How did he feel?
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
That's over. Go ahead, sir. You can answer the question.
Sad, depressed, hurting.
Okay. Referring to the active shooter policy, what is the policy regarding debriefing?
Your Honor, I'm going to object outside the scope.
It is outside the scope, but the objections are overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer the question.
A debriefing would be held after any sort of an event, even smaller events like a burglary that we respond to. So in an active shooter, afterward, when the scene is safe and everything's cleared up, the scene's been handled, the investigation is ongoing, everyone that was at the event would be called together to have a debrief. And the incident commander would hold that debrief, and we would discuss things such as what went right, what went wrong, what we could do better, and basically get some intel for future events and how to handle those in a better way, more efficient way. Or if it was done very well, then we would, praise those actions.
Is it the highest ranking person on the scene who is supposed to conduct that debriefing?
Not necessarily. It's the incident commander could be, usually is somebody that's the highest rank, but not always.
Who was it on that day based upon who you saw at the scene?
I believe the incident commander was Colonel Pohl.
Were you ever debriefed?
I was not.
And that you were willing to be debriefed? Nobody ever asked you, correct?
Judge, objection to relevance.
Well, at this point, that's his thing. Go ahead, sir. Ask your next question.
when are you trained to keep people away from a scene?
We try to keep civilians and citizens away from every scene that there could be potential danger to them.
So when somebody says stay 500 feet back, it is not inconsistent with your training to do so, correct?
That's correct.
And are you encouraged in terms of your training to keep people away if you think they may get hit, let's say, with bullets?
Of course, yes.
Is it prudent, based upon your training, to have parents and kids flood a school when there's an active shooting going on?
No, we would not want that.
And finally, on the scene, did you ever think, well, first of all, did you ever know with certainty that there was injuries inside of the 1200 building?
Not until I saw Mr. Hickson.
Okay. Up to that point, had your dispatch ever let you know over the radio that there are injured kids inside of the 1200 building?
I was not aware of any injured students in the building.
Did it seem that Carl Springs had extra intel that you did not concerning that
Objection to
subject?
asked and answered, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's his thing.
Did there ever come a time when you're on the scene taking a position of cover by the 1300 building where you said, there could be kids that are bleeding out, I need to go running into the 1200 building?
Objection to speculation, Your Honor.
Well, no, that's overruled, sir. This is directed into you. You have personal knowledge, what you thought in your head. You may answer the question, sir. Go ahead.
That was never a consideration.
And is that why you then didn't go into the 1200 building?
That and I had another job to do, yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Okay. Any recross based on that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Sergeant, you were trained by the Broward Sheriff's Office, correct?
I was.
And the head of training for many years was Major Samuel Samaroo, correct?
Yes.
What was the name?
Samuel Samaroo, Samaroo. And you received the same training, the in-service training, as every other BSO officer?
Potentially.
Potentially. So in-service DLE training, you're saying that not every officer gets the same training?
Our training, there's so many of us that from the time it starts on a particular type of training, it might be in January, it doesn't end until June. So by the time the entire agency goes through the training can evolve into something a little different than it was when it started.
How about an in-service training, DLE 1 from 2013?
I couldn't even begin to know what that was.
So I'm not asking specifically, I'm saying would every officer, all 1,600 BSO deputies be trained the same thing?
The scenarios can change over the 6 months that it gets us all to go through.
I'm sorry, continue.
So our training isn't the same when it starts as it is in the very end. Generally it is, but the scenarios can change and the training can change.
Have you been in a training officer before?
Have I been in?
Yes.
I have not.
Okay. So you're testifying that the scenarios can change, that the training can change. You've never been in training unit though, correct?
I have not.
And you were never trained in hunches, right?
No.
That's just based on your experience, correct?
Yes.
Based on your common sense, correct?
Yes.
So not every scenario that an officer, that a deputy faces, do they receive specific training on, correct?
That would be possible, yes.
But they do receive training on active shooters, correct?
We do receive active shooter training, yes.
And the training in active shooters is to go to the sound of the shots. That every shot fired could be potentially another person dead, correct?
Conceivably, yes.
Well, you say conceivably. Is that what you were trained?
There was two parts to that question.
Are you trained to go to the shots?
That is one of the stimulus that we follow, yes.
That's the main stimulus you follow.
Yes.
Because there's a difference between when shots are being fired and when shots stop being fired, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Second part of the question. You're also trained that every time a trigger is pulled by an active shooter, someone could potentially be shot dead, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Now, you testified on redirect that you're trained to keep people away. That's not the priority in an active shooting, though, while the shots are being fired, is it?
Priority, no.
Priority is to find the shooter, correct?
We have to do a lot of things in an active shooter. Obviously, getting the shooter to stop shooting is the priority, but there's many other things that we have to do at the same time. We have to multitask. It's not a one-dimensional thing, and every scenario is different.
The scenario where you're standing 75 feet from a building where 70 shots are fired, you're trained to go into the building, right?
That would be a possibility, sure.
Possibility. So the training that you received under Major Samaru, it's only a possibility to go in?
If I can determine that the shots are coming from inside the building, then yes, I would advance towards the building.
And you can determine such as ways that you did with the 1300 by looking in windows, correct?
That's one way, sure.
That's one way. Mm-hmm. To open up the door like you did in the 1200 building, correct?
Yes.
Because that's gathering intel, correct?
Yes, it is.
Like when you ask the students running out questions, where's the shooter? That's gathering intel. Things like that could be done, correct?
Yes, it is.
Moving, correct? Just in general, moving. If there's no stimuli, to try to collect stimuli.
If you're not getting any stimulus where you're at, that's an option, yes.
So if you're not getting stimulus for, let's just say 35 minutes, standing in place, you're not going to gather intelligence, right?
It all depends on what the scenario is.
The scenario being that 70 shots are fired 75 feet from you. Shooting is over. Shooting ends. No more stimuli. Do you stand there for 35 to 40 minutes?
As opposed to doing what?
What your training says to do, to go collect intelligence.
Collecting intelligence can mean a lot of different things.
Such as asking kids questions.
Yes.
Looking in windows.
Yes.
Moving to the other side of the building. If you think shots are coming from the football field, moving towards the football field, correct?
It's a possibility, yes.
You said possibility again, but I'm talking about your training. Anything's a possibility. Ninjas could come through that door as a possibility.
The training scenarios don't train us for every single scenario, so there's possibilities that there's other avenues to explore and other options for you, such as making sure that there's nobody coming onto the campus, or making sure that there's that the shooter is not approaching you or coming to the area that you're in.
When you got to Holmberg Road, you contemplated jumping over the fence to go to the sounds of the shots, correct?
I did.
Because your training said what?
That we want to find the shooter.
That's the priority, correct?
It is the priority, yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, is the witness excused?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir, you may step down. Thank you very much. While he's doing that defense, you may call your next witness.
The defense calls Cindy Helgerson. Cindy Helgerson.
If I gotta come all the way up here to the witness stand, please. Once you reach it, before you have a seat, you just stop and look at me. Raise your leg. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please be seated. And once you're seated, if I can get you to scoot that chair all the way forward as far as it will go, can you please state your full name and spell your full name?
Cindy Helverson, CINDIHELVERSON.
Mr. Egosh, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you tell the jurors what you do for a living?
I'm a teacher,
And what do you teach?
math,
At what school?
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
How long have you been a teacher?
16 years.
All at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas?
No.
Where were you before?
Several middle schools throughout the county.
And were you a teacher at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas on February 14, 2018?
Yes.
What building were you in?
At the time of the shooting, I was in Building 1.
Building 1?
Yes, at the time.
Where did you have a classroom?
In the 1200 building.
And what happened that drew your attention to there being something disturbing at the school?
I heard the fire alarm when I was in the 100 building.
What happened next?
Another coworker and I were walking towards the 1200 building, which was where our post was, where we have to go during a fire drill.
And what path did you take to get there?
We took the path down across the courtyard through the 700 and 800 building.
Can I show you a map, and if you
Sure.
can identify for us? This is Defense Exhibit F. Take a look at that and see if that, the 700 building is over here. And this is
So
the
yeah,
800
so
building.
we took from the 100 building, we went across through here until we got stopped and turned around to come around.
And did you ever see Scot Peterson?
Yes.
Where did you see him approximately?
I was approximately in this area and he was at the end of the hallway over here.
Between the 700 and 800 building?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you describe the sound level of the fire alarm
Very loud.
in that particular area?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens next?
We were approached by Mr. Greenleaf where we were told this wasn't a drill and to turn around and take cover.
What happened next?
My coworker and I, she fortunately had a key with her. We were able to get into a classroom in the 700 building.
Okay. And what happened next?
We sat there for a very, very long time waiting for somebody to come in and get us. At that point, we didn't hear any more shots. We heard them when we were in the hallways.
Let's talk about that. Where were you when you heard, did you know that there were shots, whatever you heard?
Not at first.
Okay, what did you think that they were?
More like firecrackers or balloons popping.
All right. How many noises did you hear?
Many. It was a barrage of them.
And did you know where they were coming from?
I knew the vicinity, but I didn't know the exact location.
Okay, so first, if you can just identify how close you got to my client when you heard those loud noises. So you had identified already where he was. If you could put your
Yes.
finger on that and then show us just generally where you were.
I was within this vicinity over here when he was more at the end of this building here.
Okay, how close to him were you when you heard those shots?
I would say 25 feet.
Okay. Were you able to see what he was doing at the end of the hallway?
I only saw him from the back. I could tell he was either like this, talking on a radio, or I couldn't tell what he was doing
Okay.
because I only saw him from the back.
And just for the record, when you say like this, you had gestured something, you tilted your head, correct?
Yeah, so he was either on his radio or he had his gun pulled. I couldn't really tell what he was doing because I only saw him from the back.
Okay. And feel like those shots that you heard were from inside a particular building or outside or both?
I couldn't tell if they were inside or outside at that point.
And did you have a general idea of where you thought they may be coming from in that moment?
I knew they were coming from in front of me, but I knew they weren't coming from behind me. I just knew that they were in the forward direction.
Other than that, could you narrow it down to any particular specific location, or it was just anywhere?
Somewhere in the vicinity in front of me.
Okay. So how far to the right could that have been?
Objection, speculation.
It could have been if it was to the
Hold
right.
on, hold on. What's the legal objection?
Speculation. Or could it have been?
Well, no, that's overruled. Ma'am, I don't want you to guess. With your personal knowledge, you can go ahead and answer the question.
Right. And you were talking about what you thought at the
Hold
time.
on, sir. Mr. Irish, please, the rule of the objection. The question is pending, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
You need to let the witness answer your question. No, sir. You keep giving the witnesses the answers. All right, and I've already spoken to you about that. So ask your question, answer the question mark, and then the witness may respond. Go ahead, ma'am. You may answer the question.
I knew it was coming from somewhere in the vicinity in front of me. That's all I knew.
Okay. Did you know whether it was coming from the right?
No.
Did you know whether it was coming from the left?
No.
Did you believe that the shots were contained in any particular location?
I did not know that.
And then, did you hear any additional shots before you went into the classroom?
I believe so. I don't remember.
And did those shots sound any different than the first ones?
No.
Did you have any different perspective on where those additional shots might have been coming from?
No, because I was in a different location at that time.
Describe that hallway area. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
Describe that to the viewers.
It's a covered area, but it's open on the south side and it's open on the north side of the hallway area.
And had you ever experienced any echo in that area?
Just from people talking, yeah. You can hear echoes and stuff in that area.
Okay. And did there ever come a time when you were there on the scene that you ever thought that shots were coming from inside the 1200 building?
From the sound, no.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing.
You're welcome.
All right, based on that cross-examination, go
Thank
ahead.
you. Good afternoon, Ms. Halverson. How are you doing?
Fabulous.
Fabulous. Good. Glad to hear that.
You testified on direct that Greenleaf told you this is not a drill to take cover.
Yes.
Approximately, I'm going to show you a couple of photos.
I'm showing you what's already in evidence that states composite 17.
A little bit. Do you recognize this area?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You can actually use the annotator. That means you can actually draw on the screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a couple questions in terms of where you were. The hallway that you're talking about, that you're walking down, can you just draw a line with your finger where that hallway is?
Yes, it's kind of weird. I believe it's in this area.
Now with the X, could you show approximately where Mr. Peterson was? Was he under the covered hallway when you saw him, or was he outside the covered hallway?
I do not recall.
Now the echoes that Ms. Walshe asked you about, do those echoes occur primarily in the hallway or outside the hallway? So just to the north there.
I would stay in the hallway.
So when you're outside the covered area, the covered hallway, the echoes aren't as bad, correct?
I don't know.
Now, about the fire alarm. The fire alarm was on for about approximately a minute. Is that correct?
Yes.
Never came on again, correct?
Not that I recall.
And you stated the fire alarm was very loud. Was it very loud inside of the actual classrooms or inside the buildings?
Inside the classrooms, they are very loud.
How about outside in the hallways?
They are loud depending upon where you are. If there's an alarm outside of there, yes.
In certain parts of the hallways, could you and I be having this conversation at this volume? Would you be able to hear me?
I think so.
If you're inside, though, you wouldn't be able to hear me, would you, at this volume?
I would be able to hear you.
You would, okay.
I just don't know how clearly.
Understood. Now, how close, using this map, I'm going to change the color to blue. How close approximately would you say you got to Mr. Peterson when you were walking down that hallway?
You want me to draw on there?
Yeah, please.
I was approximately right around this area.
Okay. And you testified that you only saw Mr. Peterson from the back.
Yes.
You didn't see what he was doing in the front.
No.
So you made this gesture as if a radio, and you pointed something out. Did you see?
I don't know what he was doing from the front.
Okay. So when you did that, it's just he might have been doing it.
Correct.
And you testified that the sounds of the shots were coming from in front of you. Correct?
Correct.
Not to the left, correct?
I don't know that for sure. I knew it was in the vicinity in front of me. It could have been the left, it could have been the right, but I knew it was forward.
And what building was in front of you?
The 1200.
Now, after Mr. Greenleaf told you to get back, where did you go?
I went into the first room, and I'm marking on here.
Yes, please.
The first room in the 700 building.
On the south side of the building.
Yes, I believe it's 702.
And who were you in there with?
Brandy Hermosillo.
Just the two of you?
Yes.
Now, you said that you were in the 100 building, so administration,
Yes.
when this all began, correct?
Yes.
Why were you in the 100 building?
I was on planning, so I had some paperwork that I needed to turn into the office
Where is your regular classroom?
in the 1200.
In the 1200 building. On what floor?
Second.
Which classroom?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Do you know if shots were ever fired?
Yes.
In that classroom?
Yes.
Now, at that time, because you were in planning, no students were in that classroom, luckily, correct?
Thank goodness, yes.
And obviously, you weren't in the building either.
Correct.
That concludes segment number 2 in today's coverage of the trial of Scot Peterson. There is more to come. I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.
This has been a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.